IVM.
Hi, everybody. On behalf of the team at IVM Podcast, I have a request for you. We'd really appreciate it if you could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and fill out our survey over there. It's going to take a few minutes to do, but it gives us some really interesting information that we can take to advertisers and brands about who's listening to the network. If you're comfortable giving us your email address, while you're filling out the survey, we'll enter you into a random drawing where we'll be sending out a bunch of IVM swag to some of our listeners. Last year we sent out coffee mugs, and this year we're hoping to send out much cooler stuff. That's ivmpodcast.com/survey. We really appreciate your help.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach Podcast, the bite-sized podcast filled with quick and easy actionable habits. Remember, great habits create that awesome life. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today's fun fact of the day has to do with ancient Chinese philosophy. Did you know that the Yin and Yang symbol originated in China sometime around 300 BCE? And this was the school of Yin and Yang, and it studied philosophy and cosmology. The philosophy talks about the origins of life and the world. It talks about how the world is governed according to the principles of Yin and Yang. It talks about how the world goes through 5 phases and moves through them interchangeably, each stage governed by the Yin and Yang. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about by Yin and Yang, this is the symbol that we see so often in all those Chinese restaurants. You know, the circle with those 2 halved curves. A black side and a white side. And within the black side is a white circle, and within the white side is a black circle. The white and black depict 2 opposite forces. The yin is the black side and represents the feminine forces. It is passive, soft, represents water and many more qualities. The yang is the white side that represents the masculine. It represents fire, action, light, etc. And there are 2 very simplistic ways of looking at both of these things. Both sides and opposites are needed to create the world. You can't just have one side, you can't get rid of the other side. Sometimes one is stronger than the other, sometimes the other is stronger. So that's one. The second way is to look at it by thinking about it in this fashion. Even within the light, there is an element of the dark. And within the dark, there is an element of the light. This is represented by those 2 circles in the middle. The white side has a black circle and the black side has a white circle. Unfortunately, this deep philosophy often breaks down as the battle between good and evil. Good versus evil. Even then, it still makes sense because we realize that in some good, there is bad, and in some bad, there is good. When something bad happens to us, our mind immediately goes and focuses on all the bad things that are happening. It immediately fixates on what is going wrong, and we start to create scenarios in our mind that make things worse and worse and worse. We get consumed by the bad news. And what is interesting is that our minds are problem-oriented. This means that our minds are programmed to jump to the worst possible scenario as fast as possible. It is a survival tool that was created to keep us alive. However, we soon realize that there is no truth to this. How many times in our life has something really bad happened that ended up being a good thing? In hindsight, we realize that it was the best thing that could have happened to us. For example, a painful divorce is something that could feel so bad, but when you look back, was the best decision and led to so much good. In my life, getting unhealthy and collapsing on the floor at the age of 31 was a really bad event. But it is what led me to make changes and become the fittest I've ever been. It led me to create this podcast and all the wonderful work that I ended up doing. Look back at your life and recognize these moments. There will be quite a few of them. And this is because there is always good in the bad. And as your habit coach, I want you to practice first seeing the good before you see the bad. There will be moments you are currently going through that feel terrible and bad. You might have failed an exam. You might have lost a job. You might have ended a relationship. Your mind will automatically go to the bad. Instead, can you pause and force yourself to notice a few good things that came out as a result? The other day, I got an email from a listener of the podcast, and he told me how one of the interview episodes was really bad because of the sound quality and some technical issues with the way the recordings had been done back then. My first reaction, of course, was, oh no, I messed up and a listener is angry. But I paused and I looked at the good. A listener must care so deeply about the podcast that he took out the time to send me a 4-paragraph email about this mistake. I could see the concern in his mail. The person was giving me genuine feedback to improve. This was a very simple, everyday example of this habit. How can you train your mind to observe the good in things before it reacts and thinks only about the bad? So your simple habit starts by first realizing that in the bad things that happen to us, there is some good. Then, when something bad happens to us, practice pausing and first looking at the good in the situation. This small step of first looking at the good before looking at the bad will set you up for a happier life. Don't default to the worst possible situation. Instead, observe and look for the good. It is not always evident. It needs some training and practice. Do this every time till it becomes a habit.
So start these habits and share with us your progress using the hashtag #TheHabitCoach. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome180.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I wanted to kind of just give a quick reminder to everybody. As I mentioned up top, we are doing our annual listener survey right now. If you could please go and take a couple of minutes out of your day and fill it out, we would really, really appreciate it. It's ivmpodcast.com/survey. If you're comfortable giving us your email address, we'll enter you into a random drawing, and we're going to be sending out swag to a bunch of randomly selected listeners. So do definitely get on board that train. Let me tell you a little bit about what we did on the network this week. We launched a new show called Zindagi Diaries with Ragini Kumar. Many of you might have seen Ragini on television during the IPL. She's a presenter, but she's showing a different side of herself over here with a poetry podcast. Give it a shot, give it a listen. Let me know what you all think. Vishal Gondal is back this week after a while. He's been on an extended break, but he has Rahul Narvekar for the first episode. Really interesting conversation. Do check it out. Raji Saman joins Gauri Devidayal on This Round Is On Me, the two talk about the wine business and what's going on there. We had a number of conversations about the Farmers Bill and the surrounding agitation this week on the network as well. Maruk Inayat had a great episode on the note. Pulyabazi did a deep dive into the issues around this. And on Siders, we have our typical, fun conversation about this stuff with a little bit of a seriousness, a little bit of fun. Do check that out on Cock and Bull on Thursday last week. Akash Mehta joined us for that episode. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
What are some of the radical changes that are now shaping our workspace? With physical distancing and heightened safety protocols being the norm, will technology finally make its large-scale entry to the workspace? Will design as we know it change for the long term? Is it possible for the Indian commercial real estate space to adopt a 360-degree approach to sustainability? Join our hosts at the Future of Space podcast by RMZ as we deliberate with industry leaders, analysts, and bright young minds on the way forward for the workspace given the new COVID normal. Tune in to the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you stream your favorite podcasts